Have you ever felt deceived or manipulated without realizing it? The secret to avoiding scams lies in understanding an invisible power. Meet the trickster, the archetype that operates in the shadows of our mind. It can deceive, but it also teaches. Want to know how it works and how to protect yourself from this mental trap? Don't be fooled. Discover how to identify this game and how you can use this wisdom to turn things in your favor. Stay alert. The trickster is closer than you think. You know that moment when everything seems normal, but suddenly a strange feeling takes over. It's like a fog clouding your mind and you can't quite explain why. It might happen during a work negotiation, an exciting flirtation, or even a seemingly simple life choice. When we feel this unexplained urgency, this impulse to decide quickly, it's usually because something bigger is working behind the scenes. The most dangerous part of this story? Almost no one realizes they're walking into a trap until it's too late. Imagine someone in a meeting closing an important contract. Everything seemed right until an uncomfortable feeling emerges, the urge to sign quickly, to leave, to get it over with. This feeling is like a dog sensing danger in the air. But unlike animals, we've been trained to ignore these internal signals. Today we'll understand why this uncomfortable little voice can be your greatest shield against life's biggest pitfalls, those that don't come with a warning sign. This invisible phenomenon is older than human history itself. And the key to understanding it lies in a character that crosses cultures, mythologies, and even our strangest dreams. The trickster. An archetype that, when understood, can become our compass through the illusions and traps of the modern world. But before unveiling who this mysterious and powerful figure is, we need to recognize that it might already be working much closer than you imagine. Imagine a force that, instead of guiding you through logic, prefers to throw you into doubt, contradiction, and error. This force has a name: Trickster, an archetype as old as humanity itself, appearing in virtually every myth around the world. From mischievous gods like Loki in Norse mythology to Jack Sparrow from Pirates of the Caribbean, the trickster is the one who flips the script, distorts what seemed obvious, and plays with rules as if they were elastic. But he doesn't do this just to cause chaos for fun. He has a much deeper mission than it appears. In Carl Jung's psychology, the trickster is seen as the expression of the irreverent, ambiguous, and unconscious side of our psyche. It's that part of us that resists rigid morality, laughs at conventions, provokes, deceives, and challenges the established order. When it appears in dreams, myths, or impulsive actions, it's a sign that something in us needs to be reviewed, broken, liberated. The trickster doesn't respect boundaries because its job is precisely to reveal where we're to attach to our own illusions of control and perfection. The great paradox is that, although the trickster leads us to make mistakes, it also teaches us through these very mistakes. Its pedagogy is the stumble, the fall, the embarrassment that illuminates a new perspective. When we understand the trickster's action in our lives, we can see where we're deceiving ourselves, where we accept ready-made truths too easily, where we let internal or external tricks guide us without questioning. Recognizing the trickster is taking an immense step toward true inner freedom. And in the next topic, we'll see how to identify its presence in everyday situations. When the trickster enters the stage of our dreams, it's like a warning light flashing before our eyes. Have you ever dreamed of someone lying, deceiving, or cheating? These seemingly simple dreams are direct messages from the unconscious, alerting us that something is out of sync in our waking life. Often, the trickster appears in these moments to indicate we're heading in the wrong direction, whether in a relationship or an important decision. And like any good messenger, he does this in a disconcerting way. What's interesting is that the trickster, although causing discomfort, has an important function. It helps us notice the traps we're about to fall into. If a dream with a trickster emerges, perhaps it's time to question the choices we're making. Sometimes the unconscious uses these dreams to confront us with our own distorted perception of reality, and by recognizing the warning, we can redirect our actions before the mistake materializes. This is an exercise in self-knowledge that, though not easy, can prevent many regrets. Understanding the trickster in dreams is understanding that it isn't just creating chaos, it's trying to guide us toward a better understanding of our inner life. Don't ignore these messages. They're like beacons on a dark road, illuminating the shadows of our unconscious. When we can hear and interpret these signals, we take a big step toward our growth, but of course this requires attentive listening and a willingness to look at what we often prefer to ignore. When the trickster enters the scene, it places us at a fork in the road, a dilemma. On one side, we can simply ignore the signal, follow impulses, and move forward without questioning. Life on this path will teach us lessons through error and regret. On the other side, we have the chance to stop, reflect, and question. How am I deceiving myself? This powerful question opens the door to self-knowledge. The trickster, contrary to what many think, doesn't want to destroy us. It wants to give us an opportunity to see beyond the surface, to expand our vision, and avoid falling into the same traps over and over. Often, the temptation is to move forward without stopping to reflect. Today's world moves at a frantic pace, and the pressure to act quickly is great. However, true wisdom comes from pausing. By choosing to integrate the trickster into our lives, we allow ourselves to question our perception, our choices, and even our own patterns. It's difficult, of course, because we're taught to act quickly, but it's precisely this reflection that leads to better decisions and a deeper understanding of ourselves. The trickster isn't a presence to be feared, but rather understood. It puts us to the test and teaches us that the easy path isn't always the best. By integrating its lessons, we develop a wiser and more strategic way of living. So, instead of being defeated by our own failings, we grow from them, learn from them. And in the end, the trickster becomes an ally, not an enemy, always present to help us see what others, and even ourselves, might ignore. The trickster, contrary to what many imagine, isn't just a negative figure. It represents the ambiguous side of life and human psyche, mixing good and evil, chaos and wisdom. By accepting the trickster's presence, we're recognizing that the world isn't entirely clear and simple, but rather full of illusions and traps. Psychological reality is complex and full of nuances, and the trickster appears precisely to alert us to this complexity. It challenges us to go beyond certainties and deal with the shadows within us, and in doing so, offers us a unique opportunity for personal growth. We can't ignore that the trickster also brings evil in its essence. It doesn't hesitate to knock down arrogance, rigidity, and greed. It exposes the weaknesses of our psyche and confronts us with our own ignorance. This confrontation can be painful, but it's also transformative. When we recognize these weaknesses, we begin to see the world differently, more realistically, and therefore more wisely. The trickster makes us see that to grow, we need to face the illusions we create about ourselves and the world around us. However, this process isn't just about destruction. It's also an opportunity for wisdom. The wisdom that comes from recognizing life's traps, from knowing that not everything is as it seems, from learning not to cling to certainties. Those who can see the trickster as an ally, not an enemy, begin to perceive life with more attentive eyes and a more open mind. Life ceases to be a constant battle and becomes an intelligent dance where the trickster isn't an enemy to be fought, but a master to be understood. Have you noticed how sometimes we become excessively serious? As if every decision, every step were a matter of life and death. This is one of the biggest traps the trickster uses against us. When we take everything too seriously, we become rigid and vulnerable, as if we were unable to make room for the unexpected, for change, or even for mistakes. The trickster knows this and, precisely for this reason, loves to infiltrate our lives in these moments of excessive tension. Lightness, humor, and flexibility become our greatest defenses against this trap. After all, a river that adapts to the stones in its path flows more easily than one that insists on resisting. Jung said that it's in mental flexibility that we find true strength. When we take life as a great school, where making mistakes means learning, rigidity begins to dissolve. The trickster doesn't just act to confuse us, it also challenges us to leave our comfort zone, to laugh at ourselves, and thus not take ourselves so seriously. Humor, when well applied, is a powerful tool to neutralize the impact of traps that life places in our path. If you allow yourself to laugh at a difficult situation, the pressure decreases and clarity increases. This doesn't mean being irresponsible, but being lighter, allowing things to happen with more fluidity. The truth is that when we become inflexible, the trickster becomes unbeatable. We're easy targets, trapped in our own expectations and judgments. But by learning to laugh at life and the situations that challenge us, we gain power over the narrative the trickster wants to build. Instead of being victims of confusion, we become masters at navigating through it. This is true wisdom, knowing when to be serious, but also knowing when it's time to laugh, to let go, and to see life as an unpredictable dance, but one full of learning. Now, let's talk about something essential. The trickster that lives within you. That's right. Each of us carries an internal trickster, a part of our psyche that's flexible, creative, and not afraid to improvise. Connecting with this side might be the key to protecting ourselves from the external trickster and the traps it offers us. This connection doesn't mean being dishonest or tricky, but rather cultivating the ability to deal with life in a lighter and more fluid way. The inner trickster is the one who knows it's okay to change plans, that there's no problem in making mistakes, as long as we learn from them. It doesn't see life as a game of wins and losses, but as a continuous process of adaptation and learning. The best way to start this connection is to allow yourself to be more spontaneous. This might mean setting aside perfectionism for a day and accepting that not everything needs to be controlled. Maybe it's time to pick up that project you've had shelved for months and simply take the first step without worrying if it will be perfect or not. The inner trickster loves when we're bold and authentic, when we can improvise and have fun with what happens along the way. This brings a sense of freedom that's hard to achieve otherwise. By cultivating this flexibility, you become less vulnerable to the confusion and deception that the external trickster tries to cast upon you. And here's the big lesson. When you align with your inner trickster, you begin to see life with a new perspective. The world becomes more open, more fluid, and you feel more prepared to face the challenges that arise without letting yourself be fooled by illusions or traps. This doesn't mean giving up responsibility, but finding a balance between being serious and being flexible, between being careful and being creative. By befriending this part of yourself, you'll be developing an emotional immunity capable of protecting you from external traps that try to divert your path. Now that you understand the power of the inner trickster, let's put it into practice. Like any archetype, the trickster can only work effectively when we actively practice its qualities. It's not enough to just know about it. You need to experience it in real life. Start with something simple. Notice where you're being excessively rigid. It might be in your routine, your decisions, or even the expectations you have of others. Take that habit, like following a rigid schedule every day, and make a change. Maybe you change the order of tasks or even cancel an appointment without guilt. This is the trickster beginning to manifest, and by doing this, you'll be better prepared to deal with life's unpredictability. Another interesting exercise is learning to laugh at yourself. You know those situations where everything seems to be going wrong? Instead of getting frustrated or dwelling on what didn't work out, see the funny side of it all. The trickster loves humor and lightness. You might discover that when you miss the bus or forget an appointment, life doesn't have to be so serious. Of course, it's not about being irresponsible, but realizing that the world won't fall apart if you make a mistake once in a while. This kind of lightness allows you to flow through difficulties without getting stuck in them. When we allow ourselves to laugh, we release tension and make room for new possibilities. Finally, practice accepting change. This could be a journaling exercise where you note the moments when you noticed you were resisting something new but chose to go with the flow instead. It might be, for example, changing the destination of a trip because an unexpected opportunity arose, or even postponing an important plan because something more interesting came up. The healthy trickster understands that life is made of surprises and that often a detour can be what you really need to grow. This kind of practice will help you develop a unique ability, the capacity to reinvent yourself with ease, not suffering from changes, but flowing with them. It's common to feel a certain envy toward those who seem to live without restrictions, without concern for consequences. Perhaps you've noticed how some people, with their uncomplicated and sometimes even daring behavior, seem to be freer than others. This is a characteristic of the trickster in action. It doesn't follow rules, and its freedom seems to be the key to a life without limits. But here's the big insight. The true admiration we feel for these people isn't for their lack of rules, but for the sense of freedom they convey. They're at peace with the idea of failing, of making mistakes, and, more importantly, of reinventing themselves at any moment. However, the trickster's freedom isn't synonymous with irresponsibility. Often, the illusion that living without restraints is the secret to happiness arises from a misconception, fueled by our tendency to idealize others' lives. What really happens in most cases is that these people have internalized the idea that freedom lies in the ability to accept change and follow new paths without fear of failure. They aren't above the rules, but merely flowing with them, adapting to their own nature of constant change. This is the true freedom the trickster offers, the ability to start over whenever necessary. If you want to bring this freedom into your own life, the first step is to stop comparing yourself to others. The illusion of freedom we see in people around us is often just a facade. The real freedoms, the ones worth having, are in our choices to be authentic, to allow ourselves to change without guilt. The inner trickster teaches us that true freedom lies in our ability to move forward with courage, even without knowing what comes next. You don't need to act irresponsibly, but rather understand that the power to change, make mistakes, and try again is part of the process of freeing yourself from the constraints we create ourselves. The trickster is an inevitable presence in our journey, and understanding its dynamics can be the difference between a life of confusion and a life of learning. At first glance, it may seem like a villain, always challenging norms and pushing us toward error. However, if you look more closely, you'll realize that it is, in fact, a disguised master, teaching much more through the mistakes it leads us to make than any other being in our life. The secret is not to resist its pranks, but to learn to flow with them, using its lessons as steps toward a deeper understanding of ourselves. The art of living with attentive eyes and a light heart is the key to becoming immune to the traps the trickster places in your path. With open eyes, you see the tricks and traps that would otherwise go unnoticed. But the light heart? It's the shield. When your mind and spirit aren't tied down by the weight of fear or judgment, you can navigate situations with more flexibility and emotional intelligence. This doesn't mean being insensitive or disinterested, but simply being at peace with uncertainty, knowing that any mistake is a disguised opportunity. In the end, living with the trickster's wisdom means accepting the dance between the known and unknown. It's not about avoiding mistakes, but embracing the growth opportunity they bring. When you make peace with this archetype and learn to laugh at yourself, life stops being a battlefield and transforms into a journey of constant evolution. The trickster, contrary to what it seems, isn't here to defeat us. It's here to teach us to be more shrewd, more adaptable, and above all, more free. Now that you know the secret to avoiding scams and understand the role of the trickster, it's time to apply this knowledge in your daily life. Observe. In what areas of your life do you feel you might be being deceived? Could it be that you sometimes sabotage yourself? Reflecting on this is the first step to no longer being a victim of these invisible traps. Don't be fooled. Get to know the trickster inside and outside of you. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to continue diving into this universe of self-knowledge. And take advantage. On the final screen, there's another video that will go even deeper into this topic. Don't miss it.